You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks. This is episode 87. I'm your co-host, Mark Newbold, and joining me today is a man.
Oh, is that it?
Hello, Mark.
That's it. Just a man.
That's it.
I'm just a man.
Yeah.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Well, making
Just
your way
a
through
man.
the universe, that's what you are.
Just a simple man. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I should have said that.
How are you, buddy?
I'm fine, pal. How are you?
I'm good. I am very good. How's your week in Star Wars been?
Oh, it's been a busy one. There's lots of little bits and bobs going on. As I look around my immediate location, I've got the latest issue of Insider came today, so I'm going to have a little mooch through that because I've only got one piece in that one this month.
Humble brag.
Oh no, the piece about Jeremy Bullock, so that I'm quite proud of that.
Nice.
So that little piece
Yeah.
is in there, and I've got the Art of Galaxy's Edge, which I'm going to be reviewing over the next couple of days for the site. So that's out on the 27th. So I've had a quick flick through it, and wow, it looks so gorgeous. The stuff in there that roads not taken, concept pieces, just all sorts of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. And a couple of I had the latest retro range, the Mandalorian retro figures came through this morning as well, which was nice. Oh, and I've had quite a lot actually thinking on it. I've had the VHS, which I'd never seen before, and I saw it on eBay and I jumped on it. It's the VHS version of the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I've got it on video disc, and I've got it in the old box set that looked like the Ark. I've got the box set, so I've got it about 6 times already in various formats. But I've never seen it on sort of hardcover VHS, UK VHS, which I've always wanted to get my hands on, and it came today, so I was made up about that.
Awesome.
How about you, mate? You got anything new?
Yes, yeah. Actually, my Retro Wave 3, so the Mandalorian Wave, that arrived literally, I think, as we stopped recording last week, which is annoying. But yeah, speaking of Insiders, I don't have the latest issue of Insiders, but I think I may have mentioned this either on this show or it might have been on Cannon Fodder. When I moved in with Karen, my other half, I had to make a bit of space, so the Insider collection kind of was sacrificed, which was kind of like a bit of a blow. But I did it anyway just to kind of get everything in. And then I just happened to be on like the Facebook Marketplace, and somebody was selling the first 24 issues of Insider, and they literally never been read, mint. The first 3 issues still had the bookmarks on it, and the special edition issues still had the 10x8s in them. So I jumped on those. Ironically, the postage costs more because of the weight of like 30 magazines. So got that. You know how it is. Just every now and again you look around the collection and you go, oh yeah, I've got that, but I don't have that. So do you remember back in I think it would have been 96, 97?
I'm not that old, Mark. I don't remember that far back.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do remember back in 1996, or 1997, or something around there. Anyhow, Galoob, for people who make micro machines, they put out these 2 kind of little display sets of these like 24 karat gold micro machines. So one had the X-Wing and Slave One, and the other one basically just had the Tidarian shuttle with an Imperial cog. Now, I had the X-Wing and Slave One since I brought it up from the Entertainer for like 10 quid or something. And I was just like, do you know what? I'm going to get the other one. So I just basically went on eBay. There's quite a few around, all in various conditions. This one, again, luckily was really good condition. In fact, it came still in the bag with the brochure for the rest of the wave, but also like the Star Wars black and white fan club info brochure thing. So the Star Wars fan club has a lot to answer for the whole kind of gatekeeping issue, because if you look at the advert, it actually says, if you're in the States, call true fan.
Yes.
I'm just like, there you go. That's where it all stems from. It's Lucasfilm. It's because if you weren't a member of a fan club, you weren't a true fan.
I love your logic.
Thank you.
I love the logic. Yeah, you could be onto something there. I just 1-800 true fan. I do remember that very well.
Yeah.
Very well. Speaking of being able to get hold of awesome things from the past, Dave Prowse obviously passed away late last year.
Yes.
Much missed, but his estate is going up for auction. Not his entire estate, but his collectibles and memorabilia in an auction at East Bristol Auctions on the 4th of May. What better day than that? It's called Star Wars and Beyond, and there is 600 items in the whole auction. but some absolute crackers. But have you had a browse through it? Because there's posters, there's signed pictures, there's clothing.
Yeah.
Not just from Star Wars, but obviously he was the Green Cross Code man. He was a notable weightlifter. You know, there's all sorts of stuff from when he did Clockwork Orange. Just incredible stuff. And some of the figures, and there are collectible action figures, but some of the prices are incredible. There's a signed picture that Mark Hamill signed for him, I can only assume at Celebration Europe in 2007. The current bid is £4,200.
Wow.
For this signed piece. What did you think of the stuff you've seen?
Well, I mean, I was quite surprised, but then actually at the same time, he does a lot of conventions. And like you said, there's a lot of autographs from all different Star Wars actors about who I'm guessing at one point or another he may have had a table next to at a convention or what have you. But in particular, yeah, that Luke Skywalker, I should say that Mark Hamill autograph is really sweet, isn't it? Because like the personalization on it is really nice. He kind of basically says, "For David, you'll always be Dad Vader to me, your loving son. Squiggle, squiggle, squiggle," which I guess is Mark Hamill. That is really nice, actually. And I think depending on what autobiography or depending on what kind of account of the official or quote-unquote unofficial history of Lucasfilm and Star Wars, you get different sides between the Dave Prowse Lucasfilm relationship. But seeing something like that, I think is quite nice. But yeah, as you said, there's quite a few different collectibles. He actually had quite a decent, respectable Star Wars collection, I think. If you actually laid it all out, I think it would look quite impressive.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously in there, one of the things that he'd got was his original script for Empire Strikes Back. Now, everybody knows Dave liked to talk, and sometimes there may or may not have been a reporter nearby. And so sometimes things got out. Understandably, Lucasfilm were very careful about what they told him, because in the sweetest possible way for a guy who was, 6'8" and built like a brick, you know what, and could probably bench lift most of us without breaking a sweat. He liked to have a natter, didn't he? He liked to have a bit of a gossip. So some of those things, it was probably more prudent to cover any possible leak. So when he got his script for Empire Strikes Back, the lines that he delivered were quite different. In a piece on Fantha, and we've put the link in the show links, we actually look at the page from that script where Dave would have said the lines, and the lines that Vader says is, "Luke, we will be the most powerful in the galaxy. You will have everything you could ever want. Do not resist. It is our destiny." Not a sniff of "I am your father." Apparently Hamill knew, obviously Lucas knew, and Kirsch knew, but nobody else. What did you think of that? I thought, as a piece of history, I thought it was quite sweet, actually.
We're now, 40-odd years removed from The Empire Strikes Back, and I think everybody can say in probably Hollywood that reveal was the greatest cliffhanger in movie history. And I think many a director has tried to emulate a certain kind of like level of cliffhanger with, I think, that kind of Empire Strikes Back gravitas in mind. But yeah, it is interesting because, I mean, obviously when you start to read the script, Vader says a lot more than obviously he does in the final cut. And then you can start to see why sometimes the movement doesn't necessarily sync up quite so well with what James Earl Jones kind of says. There's that slight disconnect. I think out of everything, it's one of the things that is definitely a highlight of the collection. And of course, like you said, the Green Cross Code Man's costume, which I think actually, at least in the UK, it has probably had more influence on younger lives than almost Darth Vader, I would say.
I wouldn't argue with that. As a kid of the late 70s and into the 80s, Dave was the Green Cross Code Man for quite a long time for the road safety campaign, which was so important. When Dave was awarded by the Queen, he said that the Green Cross Code campaign, he believed, was easily as responsible for him getting that as it was for ever being Darth Vader or the weightlifting or anything else. It does make you realise that these campaigns are hugely important, and he was right at the forefront of it. So we'll keep a track on this, because May the 4th is when the auction takes place. I put a couple of little bids in because I just wanted something, and already been like blown out the water by my feeble bids. So I'll probably just have to make do with my signed photograph I got from Dave a few years ago. But nevertheless, some fantastic stuff in there. So if you've got pockets deep enough, get over there, East Bristol Auctions, May the 4th, and get bidding.
Hi, this is Amy Ratcliffe, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Following on from the recent Hasbro Pulse Fan Fest, when our good friend Mark joined a chat with Eric, Jing, Chris and Patrick from Hasbro, Hasbro has again announced some more Lucasfilm 50th Anniversary Black Series figures, and this time round it is the Clone Wars series. So these were released round about 2008 in 3 3/4 inch. So this is the first time that these figures, and in fact this cardback design has going to be scaled up to the 6-inch series. And basically the figures that we have is Anakin Skywalker, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, clone pilot Hawk, and we also have Echo in his ARC Trooper costume with removable helmet. These are quite nice, and actually it's a nice little set.
They're awesome. I mean, I liked that packaging back in the day anyway, in 3 3/4. It was one of the more attractive packages because the helmet shape,
it's quite fun.
Exactly, it fits so well. So to choose that to scale up was brilliant. And of course, back in sort of, especially the sort of the mid 2000s, coming at the back of Revenge of the Sith with that weird sort of big plastic bubble. When you got to your 30th anniversary wave in sort of 2007, those are probably my favourite card backs, non-vintage collection card back. That look and shape and feel, I just think they look fantastic. So to do these was brilliant. So yeah, picking Ben in that sort of semi-stormtrooper armour, that looks great. The Anakin with the sort of the hairs halfway between Attack of the Clones and Sith, that looks good.
Yeah.
But the two that really light me up, Echo looks fantastic. Couldn't be more relevant, obviously, with Bad Batch coming. Hawk looks fantastic, or Clone Pilot Hawk, rather. Looks fantastic. So I've got to say, I'll probably get all of them, even though I'm not particularly a figure collector. I just think they look so attractive. But the two that really do it for me are Echo and Hawk. I think they look amazing.
I think I may have created a rod for my own back when I picked up all the 50th anniversary episode 1 figures the other month. We seem to now be getting quite a regular, steady stream of releases. Do you think we've kind of hit a good balance?
I don't think there's ever a right answer to that, because whatever you say, you get battered from either side. But I think right now, I didn't know these were coming out.
No.
It was a nice surprise when I clicked onto the official site and there's the piece about this. Only the week before we were talking about the gaming greats. It didn't seem like that long before we were talking about the comic figures with Jackson and Keir Kanos and those figures. And then like the ones you just mentioned, the 50th anniversary Lucasfilm figures, what was it? Jawa, Greedo and Ben. They're regularly releasing these new figures, plus the Mando stuff that's come out and everything else. Probably do with a few more vintage collection figures, to be honest. I think that would be nice if there was more 3 3/4. But then if you're a 3 3/4 collector, you've got that amazing X-Wing on the way. Gaming greats we just mentioned. We've got the Razor Crest coming not that far down the line. So
yeah,
I think right now they've hit a nice vein of form, if you like. You can put a sports analogy in there. There's regular stuff coming out. For me, if I like it, I'll grab it. But otherwise, I'm happy to let it go. I'll just pick up bits that I like. I've literally only got a finite amount of space to put them in.
Don't we all?
Exactly, like all of us. But I look at these and go, well, I want the 2 armour figures. Sod's law, I'm going to get all 4 of these. I'm going to get them all because they just look so nice, and I'll find a peg for them somewhere and they'll go up on display. But I think, right now, I think they've just found the balance. I sometimes worry, we talk about this on Cannon Fodder, so many books coming, so many comics coming.
Yeah.
This morning I reviewed Star Wars issue 12. Issue 13's already out. We're always playing catch up. I've got the second issue of Whole Republic Adventures to read, which I really enjoyed issue 1, so I'm looking forward to reading and reviewing that. It's a constant chase to stay on top of it. But we're Star Wars fans, and it could be really quiet, and we'd be like, why aren't they releasing more books and comics? Why aren't they releasing more figures? So I kind of would rather have the issue of, okay, I can't get everything, but I can at least pick what I want. It's a good situation to be in. So I think Hasbro have just about got it right.
Hello, I'm Ahmed Best, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So we all like to have limited things, and we all like to have things that nobody else has got, because that's just the collector's gene in lots of us. But when it comes to unique, there's few things as unique as the Kross Lucasfilm Death Star Ultimate Collector set, because they've only made 10 of them, and they're not exactly cheap. Have you got enough for one of these, Mark? Because I'd like to get one, but I don't think I've got enough years left in my life to earn enough to make one of these go in my collection.
I mean, to be fair, when I saw the article and I saw how much it was listed for, I was like, have you added too many zeros? I thought it was like listed in yen or something like that. $150,000. So that's what, about, I don't know, 135 grand UK, something like sterling, something like that. So God knows what the import duty would be on that if you have to get that shipped over via DHL.
What a great question. I never thought of that. What a point. I never thought of that, yeah. Just send it in a jiffy bag. It's worth the risk.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, just declare it as $20 and say it's a gift. Yeah. I mean, this looks absolutely beautiful. as watches go. This is just absolutely stunning. So it's kind of like Death Star inspired. Basically, what you've kind of got is you've got the kind of exoskeleton of the Death Star in the center. So you can kind of see the super laser, but it's kind of like a frame. So both the hands look like Star Destroyers, and one looks like maybe the Executor, with Imperial kind of lighting around the outside and leather detailed strap. I mean, yeah, it's not the kind of thing you'd want to wear on a building site, I don't think, but it looks amazing.
It does. I mean, you point out the Death Star in the centre. Again, links in the show notes. Head to Fantha to have a proper look. We've put the whole gallery in there. But the Death Star in the middle, to me, looks more like the Death Star you saw in Revenge of the Sith than Rogue One almost. You know, like you say, it's like that cage of the Death Star, you know, that you saw at the right near the end. The hands are all detailed, the lighting, the leather strap's gorgeous, and there's different leather straps. I think there's a red leather strap you can get if you want one instead of the black one. The case that it comes in, it's a capsule. It's half scale to what it was in the film, but they've recreated the cases that sat on the back of the tanks in Rogue One. But the actual kyber crystal inside is screen used, so it's the real kyber crystal from the film. And then they've recreated this beautiful capsule that goes around it, which you can put other stuff in if you want to. It just looks phenomenal. It's made of wood and aluminium. It's got Aurebesh all over it, hand-painted, hand-assembled, craftsmanship up the wazoo. Just looks amazing. And a snip at $150,000 if you want to get one. So, yeah, I'm blown away by it.
I'm just quickly looking on simplyduty.com, which is basically meant to be like a duty calculator, and you'll be basically paying 24.5% of the value of a watch. So you're gonna be plonking down at least an extra like 27 grand or something crazy like that. So
wouldn't it just be cheaper to fly out and get it?
To be fair, if you're gonna get it, yeah. How do you get it? Is this like an online exclusive, or do you need to? I mean, you must surely, if it's such a small quantity, need to know somebody at Kross or something to be able to go and order these. It's like,
dude, for that kind of money, I want Felicity Jones to come to my house and hand deliver it to me. I don't really know. I mean, there's links to it in the site. I mean, there's links to it. There's actually a link in the article to order it if you want to order it. I really wish Fantha Tracks was getting commissioned for this. Because that would cover us for quite a few years. It's insane. Each one's numbered. If you look at the picture, it's like number 1 of 10. I mean, really, they've gone to that level of detail. It does look just stunning. And I'm hoping that at some point, the wonderful people at Kross will do a slightly more affordable version, maybe not in a 2-foot-long hand-built canister, and maybe not for 150 grand. But
yeah, maybe like it valued at like 1% of that 150 grand would be all right.
I could maybe do that.
I might pass this on because I do know somebody who actually worked, I think, on most containers actually at Pinewood. So I might just kind of forward this on to her and just say, hey, have you seen this? And does this kind of actually look as to what you remember building and stuff? So it's a nice touch having the screen use prop. Rogue One seems to be permeating into the actual just kind of like Star Wars pantheon in a far greater way than I think any other films in the last 5 or 6 years have.
I think you're right. I think it has, partly because, and we talked about it last week about how, I think sometimes the original trilogy, in a weird way now, in 2021, almost gets a bad rub with certain portions of the fandom because it's pre-them. Kids have come into Star Wars now loving the sequel trilogy, which is awesome because they're now in the pit with the rest of us, learning and loving Star Wars. To say to them, well, when Star Wars came out, nobody's seen anything like it. There was nothing to compare it to. You know, a Star Wars film comes out now and it's compared to Marvel, DC, Potter, Bond, everything else. The only thing you can compare Star Wars to, and it's nothing like, but was like a Bond or Star Trek on television.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing to compare it to. And I think with this, Rogue One sits so close to Star Wars. There's that nice association with the OT. It's just become part of that whole conversation now, that era. You think of the original trilogy now isn't just 3 films. The original trilogy absolutely includes Rogue One. I give it huge credit for that. Another reason I can't wait for Andor.
If you've got a spare 150 grand to plonk down on a watch, do you really think you're going to appreciate it as much as, say, obviously me and you?
That's a good question. I mean, I suppose, if you've got 150 grand to fritter away on a watch, then you can pretty much afford to buy any other Star Wars thing within reason that's ever been.
Yeah.
You know, there's not much you couldn't get for that sort of... I mean, you're talking high-end screen use stuff, but outside of that, there's nothing you couldn't get. So presumably you'd have like an insane collection. If you're that sort of crazy money person, there's only a handful of guys who've got silly money who kind of mix with other fans. There's not many. They're in a sort of a stratosphere of their own, which I find regrettable and a shame, because if you're a Star Wars fan, you want to be with other Star Wars fans and mix it up. I mean, would you even wear it? What would you do?
Well, that's just it.
You're putting it in a glass case, and I mean, a lot of us put stuff in glass cases. That I do. I don't open my figures. I like them on the packaging because I like the packaging. But so there's so many things. It's like you saying last week. You get the speeder bike, and your dad's like Schrödinger's speeder bike. How do you know it's even in there? So there's a lot of stuff like that. Anybody who buys blind bag stuff and doesn't open it, it could be a walnut in there. You don't know.
Completely.
It's that sort of thing. So you look at a piece like this, amazing as it is, and there's me saying I'd love it. I'd be petrified to wear that. I know I would whack it on a door frame and break it. I just know it. I'd rather put on a cheap 20 quid, knock around, have a bit of fun watch. Even putting that on, I think, if I got my sweat on it, I'd fret. Can we plastic wrap it first before I put it on?
Exactly.
Why have it then?
The 10 watches is going to earn Kross $1.5 million. I mean, I don't know what the demand and how popular Star Wars watches are in general to then say, well, actually, how much would you then reasonably sell a more commercially available watch? And then how many would you need to then sell to then make the same kind of money? That makes sense.
A lot. I'd rather spend 150,000 and buy 150,000 Constable Zuvios and just break that particular record just because.
Just because.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds. Bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
So a little bit of quick Obi-Wan Kenobi news. Actress Maya Erskine has been added to the cast. You may know her from other shows, including, well, I don't know how to say this name, to be honest. I think it's Pen 15. Is it called Pen 15? Is it called something else? I don't know. But she's in that show. She was in Insecure and Scoob. So anyway, she's now part of the show. The cast list keeps growing. Lucasfilm and StarWars.com announced a dozen names very recently, including Rupert Friend in Deer of Armour, Bonnie Peace coming back, Joel Edgerton coming back, obviously Hayden and Ewan. It's shaping up pretty good, isn't it? And I think they start shooting it fairly soon.
They do. From all reports, Maya's going to be in at least 3 episodes, I believe. It's great news. And the cast seems to be expanding. So we're going to hopefully have a real good glimpse at a diverse cast of like Tatooinians.
I think we're at that really sweet point before the production starts. We know a little bit because we know Hayden's in it, so Vader's in it. We know Owen and Beru are in it. Obviously, Ben's in it because it's his show. I did a review of Star Wars Issue 12 earlier, which is obviously set between Empire and Jedi. And in the review, I said we're in that sweet spot for a lot of fans. That Empire to Jedi year in Star Wars history, 3 years in real life, was an amazing time because obviously Han Solo's not in the stories, and it's the whole taking to Tatooine, all the other things that were happening in the build up to Death Star 2 and Endor and everything else. It was a really important time for Star Wars fans. And in the review, I said, one thing I like about the comic is there's moments when I'm reading the comic where it feels like the storyline is sort of weirdly veering off from feeling inverted commas right. That's purely my own perspective. I kind of feel like I know how it should feel in that time period because I'm very much steered by that old Marvel run, which was what I read as a kid, and a lot of the EU stuff. There's a sort of certain tone, maybe that's the word, a certain tone. And sometimes I feel like the comic's veering away, and Charles Soule is doing such a good job of bringing it back to feeling like it fits in that time period, because there's lots of external things that come into that. We've got to get the Galaxy's Edge mentioning, we've got to get the High Republic mentioning,
yes.
We've got to throw in certain little phrases. There's a phrase in this one, by the light, I think, and that whole the light sort of phrase feels very sequel trilogy to me. A few years ago, you just go, thank the Force or something like that, whereas now it's all by the light or thank the light or whatever. So there's all these little things, but it's all about filling out, inverted, I keep doing air quotes, that's not very good for podcasts, filling out the reality of where these characters are, where they live, how they are with each other and all that stuff. And I think we're at that point with Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like you're thinking, well, he goes to Tatooine at the end of Sith. I still think he's got Grievous's ship. I'm going to say that till they prove me wrong. So I think he could go off and leave if he's confident Luke's safe. That's his main concern, isn't it? But also, my gut tells me you're going to learn that Ben was there not only to look after Luke, Ben's there to learn himself. Ben has a purpose.
Exactly.
Ben's purpose is to set Luke up for the next chapter of what the Jedi do. And so Ben is quite selflessly doing this, giving up his life. Got to lay low anyway because of Order 66, and I think you're going to see touches of that in the Bad Batch. In that time period between Sith and A New Hope, you sort of think, well, Leia's learning the ropes of being a princess and learning all the other stuff and sort of picking up on what her mother and father are doing, and Luke's just kicking around on Tatooine being a kid who likes to hot rod speeders and swoops and stuff, you know what I mean? And so you sort of feel like you know what the lay of the land is. I think Kenobi's going to throw a few surprises at us, and I've got a feeling that Maya Erskine could be quite central to that.
I'm Gareth Edwards, and you're listening to Making Tracks on Fantha Tracks Radio.
Okay, happy day. Pull down the bunting and pop off your firecrackers or whatever you want to do, because we've got a listener's question, Mark. A listener's question. Ooh. We have a listener and they sent in a question.
That's marvellous.
Are you ready for it?
As ever.
So this is from Barry Dent, and Barry says, "Hi guys. Firstly, I love the show and I look forward to it every week." Well, that's really good to hear.
Very kind.
Do it every week. I've been thinking about the sequels quite a bit recently, and I do think the hate for The Last Jedi is unavoidable due to the way The Force Awakens is written. Now, this is weird because this question came through before last week's episode came out, and we went down that path, and this kind of picks up the conversation without him even knowing we wrote it. But here we go. JJ couldn't write Luke into The Force Awakens, putting him on Acto until the very last scene. So come The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson is faced with two routes, as far as I can see. One, Luke is connected to the Force, but choosing to stay on the island, making him either not care about his sister or a coward. Strong comment. Two, Luke is disconnected from the Force and so doesn't know about the rise of the First Order. My own view is that once you fail to write Luke into The Force Awakens, then you're pretty limited to where you can go in The Last Jedi. So you get a disconnected Luke rather than a coward Luke. What do you guys think? Now, that's really laying down a marker there, because he's thought this through and he's come up to his own conclusion of how Luke plays out. I've spoke for 5 minutes flat and it's not fair. So what do you think about this, Mark?
Thanks. To be fair, it's a plot point that I think they kind of skirted over a little bit in The Last Jedi, and I think probably did need a little bit more kind of focus, because I think it is a really important point. Again, if you kind of read the book, they do talk about the fact that Luke is disconnected from the Force, and I think you're completely right, because if you have Luke who's actively decided to switch himself off from the Force, but he's done that for like a good reason, that he feels that that's the best thing. If it's like because of some kind of trauma, like for instance, if the trauma of actually the whole Jedi Academy going up in flames and stuff caused some disconnection from the Force, then of course you've then got that whole story point of Luke having to try and reconnect. It's a good observation, really, because I think Luke is a difficult character. And I know they discussed this a lot after The Force Awakens came out and kind of said the moment they had Luke in a scene, Luke kind of stole the focus. And so I do kind of understand that really that first film needs to kind of get some kind of ground and some distance underneath the new character's feet. I mean, they just about struck the balance with Han Solo in that film, and I think possibly with Han and Luke and Leia being the important characters in that first film, you're going to really struggle to give a toss about Rey or really care about Finn. I think they kind of wrote Rian Johnson into a corner, and I think that is, as we've discussed before, a really hard thing to then kind of, wrap your head around how you then move on with that. Part of the things that people do have issues with Luke is partly down to tossing the lightsaber over his shoulder and kind of almost playing it for laughs, really. I think that's a kind of very superficial level, and obviously we can kind of get a little bit meta and we can kind of say, well, maybe this is, the director's commentary about how, we've spent the last year or so talking about and speculating what's going to happen, what's Luke going to say, what's Luke going to do. So to then kind of make light of it just kind of says, well, actually, it's not that important in the grand scheme of things. Luke does need to have some kind of development and story in The Last Jedi. He can't literally just go, right, oh, thanks for the lightsaber, forgot I had that, let's go kick the First Order's ass. There has to be some kind of conflict, and I kind of think whilst people kind of say you don't see Luke kind of getting all kind of grumpy and moody, if you look at A New Hope, he's quite impetuous and he's kind of like, oh, I want to go to Anchorhead and get my power converters. And then, when he's on Dagobah, he's like, he can't do it and he can't get the ship out of the water and he's just a bit crap and no, it's all too hard. So there's a certain level of what we see in The Last Jedi isn't like completely different from the Luke that we have seen in certain aspects of the other films. I just think that basically they've compounded it. It's meant that people who were expecting Luke of like Return of the Jedi to just come striding in and save the day. And I just think that, to be fair, it would probably be lazy storytelling if they did that.
No, you said it well. And I think what you say about Luke in the original trilogy is really important, because in Star Wars, he's a kid in Star Wars, he's probably never left Tatooine, he's just got his mates half of which have jumped ship to join the rebellion, including his best pal, who he's going to see again later on in the film, and then dies, which that kind of got washed over throughout the rest of all of this, sadly. But the petulance is there, the Tosche Station bit, like you say, the bit on Dagobah, and he's kind of having a bit of a huff because he can't do it. He almost gives up at the end when he's hanging off the weather vane, and thankfully his sister picks up the message, with her abilities. And also I think as well, over the years, especially more since the sequel trilogy's come out, I thought Harrison Ford was on such great form on Force Awakens.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
did enjoy Han. But some people have sort of said, well, they did Han really wrong because he does all that stuff in the original trilogy, and he has the relationship and the marriage fails, and then the kid leaves, Kylo, the sequence with Luke, that all happens, and then Han can't handle it and leaves. And it's basically the deadbeat dad turning up. He's gone back to smuggling, not done particularly well, lost his ship. Chewie's stuck with him because it's Chewie. There's an element of that, and it's Han's redemption, if you like, in The Force Awakens, because he does come back and has just as big an effect as he did in A New Hope, and sticking around for Empire and Jedi because, he believes in the rebellion and all that sort of stuff. And also he's found his family, if you like, which is played out beautifully in Solo because you realise he doesn't really have a family. He's just a lone kid, if you like. And then Luke is talented in the Force. His upbringing, you think if you swap the roles, if Leia had been raised on Tatooine and if Luke had been raised on Alderaan, how different would it be? Their personalities are so different, they wouldn't have come out the same. So it was the right decision. Whoever made the decision, it's basically Bail Organa makes a decision. Oh, me and my wife have always wanted a baby girl. Oh, well, you take the girl then. Could have just easily gone, me and my wife always wanted a little boy. Oh, well, you take the boy then. Obviously, that's retrofitting Revenge of the Sith to fit what we got in A New Hope. But nevertheless, Luke in Last Jedi, like Barry says, you get to Force Awakens, and I still come back to the thought process of, okay, there's the official line of what JJ was going to do, make one film and then move on. Or whether there was ever a moment when he thought, maybe I will do all three. Because leaving that cliffhanger very much feels like, unless you've got a plan, you're going to pick it up. You come back to 9, when he comes back on 9 and picks up the story threads, it feels like he's working his way back to what he kind of wanted to do at the end of 7. Does that make sense? It feels like it's a big baton to hand over to the next person. And some people look at what Rian Johnson did with it and this whole sort of inverted commas subverting expectations and all this sort of stuff. I don't necessarily buy that. If you're literally just going into a project to subvert people's expectations and just cock a snoot at them, why are you doing it? Rian Johnson obviously thought this through, picked a path he wanted to take. People look at Luke on Acto and Ben on Tatooine as parallels. There's an element of parallel, but Ben was on Tatooine because he offered to do it, essentially. He had to lay low because of the Jedi Purge and Order 66. He couldn't be beaming out the Force to everybody. He had to keep his head down. Luke goes to Acto because he's got no support network. Ben's gone. Yoda's gone. Han and Leia's relationship's falling a bit. There's a lot of stuff going wrong around them. So Luke's obviously got to a point where he's like, well, I'm the elder statesman now. I'm the guy everyone's relying on. I'm the next generation. Maybe he's not emotionally equipped for it. And there's loads of other things. It frustrates me. We've talked about this before. It frustrates me that in novels and even animated or TV shows that we're not really bridging that gap leading up to the sequel trilogy because there's so much happened to Han, Luke and Leia that we don't know about. Because they wiped away, rightly or wrongly, they just put away the EU and stepped it to one side and called it Legends. There was a lot of character stuff happened after post-Jedi that now didn't. And so we don't really know where those characters were, what they'd lived through and emotionally where they were, when all these cataclysmic things happened, like the Jedi Temple with Ben and Kylo specifically, that led to so many other things fracturing, which led to The Force Awakens. So it is a great question. I think disconnected makes more sense than cowardly. I don't see Luke as cowardly. There's a definite resignation and there's a definite choice. He's got to a point where he's like, that Jedi just can't do any good. Time for it to end. Maybe this isn't the way. Rey's mindset at the end of Rise of Skywalker is probably quite different. She's probably thinking, well, it did work. We do need to carry on. This is the way. I don't know. I can see where Barry has got to in that thought process.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
And I think that's what I've said before. It's almost like we're crying out for further expanded adventures of Luke, Han, and Leia after Return of the Jedi. I don't know if it's the fact that Lucasfilm and Disney now want to strive their own paths away from the Skywalker saga, or if it's just the fact they're just thinking maybe this is somehow something that we could cover in a film at some point with new actors 10 years down the line. I don't know. We see some stuff in bloodlines, and they're still kind of together, but they're not really together as such. They still seem to be going off and doing a separate thing. So I think, in fairness, when you start to put in some of the plot points that we get from some of the expanded universe already, it's not that too far of a big extrapolation to kind of go, well, you know, they kind of met in a very different environment and they were kind of almost pushed together because of like circumstance, but they are quite opposite, really. And so you do wonder how, when everything kind of slightly quiets down and there's like normal life, if you're Han, are you happy to just float around? I mean, even in the Legends, when he was kind of made general and, you know, he had responsibility, he never seemed to kind of want to do it. He wanted to kind of go off and be a smuggler again, which is his old life. So, you know, I think for me, the characterization of Han by The Force Awakens wasn't too far different. I mean, I think the backstory that they kind of try to give him about him, like going off and being, was it like a pod race pilot or something, or speeders or something, and starship kind of races, kind of seemed a little bit not quite true to the character, I think. But at the same time, I suppose it's also, you know, it's a different take. Bearing in mind that the Jedi Temple is such a big character moment for Luke. The destruction of the Jedi Temple basically then defines, I guess, his next 30 years, or however long it was when he was on Acto. We kind of deserve to see it. And as much as I would probably be okay with seeing it either in a book or maybe a comic, I think we kind of deserve to see it on screen, be it Disney Plus or in a film. There's
definitely a lot of ground to cover there. And I get that they want to move beyond Han, Luke and Leia, and they want to move beyond the original trilogy to a degree. And they sort of did that with the sequel trilogy. I don't think, okay, Force Awakens, incredible numbers, incredible popularity. Last Jedi's got a very, very vociferous fan base. But I guess Disney, the bean counters at Disney, who aren't necessarily Star Wars fans, they're Disney fans, and Disney fans of making lots of money would look at The Last Jedi and go, that took $1 billion less than the last film. That's what they'll look at. The direct sequel to The Force Awakens to take not that much more than half of what the first one took, they would look at that and go, oh, what's gone wrong here? There would be little alarm bells. And then The Rise of Skywalker just about made what Rogue One made. So I think I'm talking from purely business money now, I'm not talking about creative, I'm talking business money. It's still an incredible amount of money to make. Force Awakens cost more than Last Jedi did, and Rise of Skywalker cost more than both, I think. I think it was the most expensive. But I think the bean counters would look at that and go, is there enough of a fan base? Is there enough popularity beyond what they've done at Galaxy's Edge to really double down and go, right, here's your Star Wars TV series featuring yada, yada, yada from the sequel trilogy, knowing that, you know, John, Daisy and Oscar are moving on to pastures new, telling stories in that time period, or doing an animated show, which I think fans would be just as into if they said, right, we're going to do an animated show with young Ben and Han and Leia are still together and Uncle Luke is starting up a Jedi Academy and this is the story we're going to tell. And it's canon. So what happens. Animation quality is getting silly now. And the voice acting it's not cartoon voice acting anymore. No. It's acted, it's performed now, it's different. It feels like it should be live action. It feels like they've just took the soundtrack from a live action film and animated it. So the quality there is just on point. There's definitely stories to be told. And just to go back to Barry's question, I think he's absolutely right. There's enough of a question mark there that you could really delve into it and learn why you got to that point.
Well, I think that was quite a good question. So thanks for that, Bazza. We really appreciate that you've actually sent us a question. And if you want to be like Bazza and you want to send us a question or a comment on anything that we've talked about, you can get in touch. Mark, do you want to let people know how you can get in touch?
I certainly do. And yes, thanks to Barry for that question. It was a really good one. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit panthertracks.com or check out the free Panther Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@panthertracks.com, which is exactly what Barry did, and I'm hoping many more of you do it because we like these questions, they get us thinking. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Panthertracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Panthertracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Done, episode 87 in the can, and we'll do it again next week.
We certainly will. Buddy, you take care. Everybody else, stay safe. Keep on wearing those masks. Get vaccinated if you can. And may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Desert Planet Discs.
Coming up next, Desert Planet Discs. There you go. That's my Vanessa Marsh.
Very good. You'd never tell the difference.
I know.